because I will never, ever.
For more than 50 years, Ron Howard has carried one of Hollywood's rarest reputations, an artist who's both talented and universally liked. The kid who grew up as Opie on The Andy Griffith Show, matured into Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, and then transformed into one of the industry's most respected directors. Calm, thoughtful, professional. Howard doesn't yell. He doesn't throw things. Mainly, he believes leadership on a film set begins with respect. But even the nicest man in Hollywood has his limits. Behind that steady smile is a quiet history of frustration, 7 collaborations that tested his patience, reshaped his approach to leadership, and proved that kindness has boundaries. These are the 7 actors Ron Howard reportedly couldn't stand working with. 1. Mel Gibson. The co-director who wouldn't sit down by the mid-1990s, Howard was a trusted studio director, measured, organized, incapable of chaos. Ransom, 1996, seemed like the perfect match. A taut thriller with Mel Gibson, then Hollywood's reigning superstar fresh off Braveheart, 2 professionals at the top of their game. But once cameras rolled, the collaboration turned uneasy. Gibson arrived with a director's confidence and a star's authority. He challenged camera angles, questioned dialogue, and treated the set as if 2 captains were steering the same ship. Howard valued ideas, but he valued order more. Crew members recalled endless discussions that slowed momentum and drained energy. "Everyone has a job," Howard once said of filmmaking. "The movie only works when we trust the process." With Gibson, that process blurred. The result was a hit, but the experience left a mark. Howard later chose leading men who brought intensity without trying to run the room. He never reunited with Gibson, and never again allowed a performer to blur the line between star and director. 2. Shelley Long, the perfectionist who stopped the clock jump back to 1982. A young Ron Howard was directing his first big studio film, Night Shift. It was supposed to announce him as a filmmaker who could handle chaos with charm. Henry Winkler and a wild-card newcomer named Michael Keaton filled the screen with manic energy. Then came Shelley Long. Brilliant, funny, and controlling to the point of paralysis. Long preferred structure. Every movement had to be justified, every line rehearsed until flawless. Keaton thrived on improvisation, constantly rewriting energy in real time. Howard's set, built on trust and discovery, became a tug-of-war between chaos and calculation. Crew members remembered scenes stretched for hours while Long debated tone and motivation. Howard never shouted, but his patience thinned. "Some actors arrive with their minds made up," he said years later. "That leaves no room for discovery." A Night Shift launched his career, but the ordeal taught him something crucial. Preparation should never strangle spontaneity. From then on, he cast for temperament as carefully as talent. 3. Henry Winkler, When Friendship Met Fame. To audiences, Happy Days was wholesome perfection. For Ron Howard, it became a lesson in how fame can warp gravity. He began the show as the heart of the story, the clean-cut Richie Cunningham. Then Henry Winkler's Fonzie exploded into a pop culture phenomenon, and everything changed. Scripts shifted toward the leather jacket rebel. Marketing followed. The series sold as Richie's coming-of-age slowly became the Fonz Show in everything but name. Howard never attacked Winkler publicly. They remained cordial, but insiders noticed his frustration. He had been cast as the anchor, only to watch the spotlight drift away. "In television," Howard said later, "the audience decides who the story belongs to." Privately, it hurt. He'd spent his youth learning discipline, chew only to see the show's balance rewritten overnight. The experience hardened his directorial philosophy: protect equilibrium, guard the story, and never let celebrity override collaboration. 4. Tom Sizemore, The Storm You Can't Predict. If working with Mel Gibson tested Howard's control, Tom Sizemore tested his calm. Sizemore joined Ransom as one of the film's antagonists, a perfect fit on paper, gritty, magnetic, authentic, off-camera. He was a storm. By the mid-90s, Sizemore's volatility was notorious. He could deliver brilliance in one take and derail the schedule the next. Late arrivals, erratic moods, sudden bursts of energy that threw entire scenes off rhythm. Howard's sets run like orchestras. Sizemore brought heavy metal volume. Crew members described the director quietly stopping production more than once, not in anger, but to protect the crew's focus. Some days, Howard later admitted, I had to recalibrate everything around one person's unpredictability. He never insulted Sizemore publicly. Yet, when the actor died in 2023, Howard's silence said enough. Even for Hollywood's kindest director, forgiveness sometimes ends where professionalism does. 5. Russell Crowe, genius with a cost. If any collaboration defines Howard's patience, it's Russell Crowe on A Beautiful Mind, 2001. The pairing looked perfect. Howard's stability meeting, Crowe's volcanic intensity. The film swept the Oscars, but the process left scars. Crowe approached every scene like combat, dissecting each note, challenging rewrites, turning direction into dialogue. Assistant directors remembered marathon discussions that blurred into arguments over authenticity. Russell was brilliant, one crew member said, but he made everything harder than it needed to be. Howard later told The Hollywood Reporter, with some actors you guide the scene. With Russell, you hold on tight and hope for the best. Crowe, for his part, praised Howard's intelligence but called his style too safe. Their work produced magic on screen, but once the Oscars were over, the partnership ended. Howard never cast him again. Some collaborations, he said, are meant to happen only once. 6. Andy Griffith, the father who wasn't before all the studios, before directing, before adulthood. There was 6-year-old Ron Howard on The Andy Griffith Show, To America. Andy Griffith was the model of warmth, the calm sheriff of Mayberry. To young Ron, he was both mentor and mystery, early on. Griffith treated the boy like a partner, not a prop. He made me feel like I belonged, Howard once said. But as success tightened its grip, the atmosphere shifted. Griffith grew tense, sometimes irritable, worn by the pressure of carrying a hit. Castmates whispered about his temper. Howard learned to read the air before stepping on set. By his teens, he began asking creative questions about Opie's character, only to meet flashes of impatience. The man who played America's favorite father figure wasn't always patient with his fictional son. After the series ended, their contact dwindled to formality. When Griffith died in 2012, Howard's tribute was gracious but brief, respectful, not sentimental. The lesson he took from Mayberry lasted forever. The kindness the camera captures should be real when the lens stops rolling. 7. Marlon Brando, the legend that devoured the set. In 1995, Ron Howard was offered the dream assignment, directing Marlon Brando, the mythic actor who had shaped modern performance itself. On paper, it was a coronation. In reality, it became an ordeal. Brando's late-career behavior was infamous. Refusal to memorize lines, cue cards plastered across props, sudden absences that froze production. For a director who lives by schedules and trust, it was creative quicksand. Crew members recalled Brando vanishing for hours, then returning with new revelations about his character that required rewrites on the spot. One assistant remembered Howard pacing the set, silently calculating how to salvage the day without humiliating a legend. Eventually, the production collapsed under the weight of Brando's indulgence. Howard never publicly blamed him, but years later, he reflected, "Some legends earn their reputation through their work. Others earn it through their behavior. It's important to know the difference." That difference became a cornerstone of his career. Admire genius, but never let myth hijack the mission. The arc of patience. Rearranging these stories tells a clear evolution. Early in life, young Ron learned that authority can hide temper, Andy Griffith. On happy days, he saw how fame distorts balance, Henry Winkler. Then came the early directing lessons, structure strangling spontaneity, Shelley Long. Unpredictability threatening order, Tom Sizemore. And star power challenging control, Mel Gibson. Later, he faced raw volatility disguised as brilliance, Russell Crowe, and, finally, chaos masquerading as legend, Marlon Brando. Each experience thickened his armor. Howard didn't grow cynical, he grew precise. He learned that great filmmaking demands not just talent, but temperament. That kindness isn't weakness, it's discipline. And that protecting a healthy set sometimes means drawing lines the audience never sees. The Howard standard, ask anyone who's worked with him and you'll hear the same refrain. Ron Howard's sets feel calm, schedules run on time, crew members feel heard, actors feel safe. He creates that environment not because he's naive about ego, but because he's seen what happens when ego wins. His rulebook is simple. Preparation is respect. Punctuality is professionalism. And kindness is not optional. He doesn't ban conflict, he welcomes collaboration, but he expects it to serve the story, not the self. When those principles break, his patience ends. That's what these 7 encounters illustrate. Gibson blurred authority, long smothered spontaneity. Winkler showed how fame reshapes fairness. Sizemore taught the cost of volatility. Crowe proved brilliance can exhaust a set. Griffith revealed that performance and person aren't always aligned. Brando embodied chaos at its most seductive and destructive. Together they chart a map of boundaries, the invisible lines Howard drew to protect his crews, his films, and his sanity. Why it matters. Hollywood loves stories of screaming directors and tortured geniuses. Ron Howard is the quiet opposite, proof that greatness can grow from decency. Yet decency doesn't mean surrender. His calm is a choice, not a default. He's been tested by icons, humbled by idols, and still emerged believing that filmmaking works best when everyone shows up prepared and kind. Behind the image of Hollywood's nicest guy is a professional who's walked away from chaos, refused to indulge arrogance, and built a legacy on respect. Every film, from Apollo 13 to A Beautiful Mind, reflects that steady heartbeat. So were his standards too high, or simply the standards every set should have? Did these actors cross the line, or did Howard prove that professionalism isn't negotiable? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you love hearing the real stories behind Hollywood's legends, the clashes, the lessons, the quiet moments that shaped entire careers, remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Because in a town that celebrates chaos, Ron Howard built his empire on calm.